Well, Josh, from the highest levels of finance in the passionate arenas of professional sports, you've got a unique vantage point right now about what it takes to build and rebuild iconic institutions, because that's what you've been doing. After Josh graduated from Wharton and Harvard, he co-founded Apollo, which he and his partners built to be one of the best alternative asset managers in the firm, a stunning achievement. But Josh's drive never stops, and it certainly didn't stop there when he founded in 2022 26 North, his next generation of an alternative asset manager being built entirely in his vision. And of course, as you know, Josh's influence extends far beyond the boardroom, which is really exciting. He's the managing partner of the Washington Commanders, who I guess beat the Giants yesterday, but that's not exactly that's not exactly a high bar. Sorry, Josh.
You said it.
And the Philadelphia 76ers and the New Jersey Devils. He's also the general partner of London's Crystal Palace Football Club, which is on a roll in the Premier League. So that is a bright light. And then just recently, he announced that he'll be bringing a WNBA franchise to Philadelphia. But importantly, having known Josh and Marjorie for a long time, his commitment to philanthropy is something that has been unwavering over a long time. Youth development and education, particularly in the places that his teams call home, has been something that I think is 100% commendable. So today we've got a builder, a rebuilder, if I could say, and a pillar of the community. As you all know, we'll take some questions at the end if I feel like it. So use hashtag #LegendsLive on Slido. So Josh, before we get into it, not many people know that you were a wrestler at Penn and even an outstanding American in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. So how much of that mindset, Josh, from your standpoint, the discipline, the one-on-one strategy, and frankly, the sheer grit has influenced the way you deal with the boardroom and when you negotiate? What has wrestling done for you?
Yeah, so obviously grew up wrestling, and there's nothing like being physically dominated by another human being to sharpen your mind, right?
Exactly.
And I remember, you literally go, it's one-on-one, and that someone's trying to choke you and kill you. So what you find, though, is that you, when you prepare, when you're disciplined, when you run, when you lift, you do better, right? And that was a great life lesson for me. I was not a good student when I was younger. I was very into sports, wrestling as being one of them, and I, kind of blew off school. I didn't focus, and the experience in wrestling changed the trajectory of my life in the sense that I started applying it to life, and once I started studying and getting competitive in school, I started getting good grades, and so that really helped. And then the other thing is, I say this jokingly, it prepares you for the financial markets, right? It prepares you for all of what we do in the sense that you go through, I remember being at Drexel in 1987 and 1990 at Apollo and 01 and 08 and then COVID. You get knocked down, right? And there's always someone that is going to be better than you, and it's about resilience and getting back up.
And it's also the legendary stories about Josh running investment committees where he doesn't stop until he gets the answer. But Josh, you grew up in Chevy Chase, and I know a lot about your childhood. How did it sort of shape your business acumen, your leadership skills? Because you went through an interesting childhood, and aside from, now owning the Commanders, which were the Redskins, were there some key mentors? What did this early upbringing do for you?
Yeah, so my mentor that I always talk about is my dad, and I would say that what he did is he just believed in his family. Like, he was there at every soccer practice, at every wrestling match. He was also pretty focused on, he wasn't really happy when I wasn't doing well in school, so that was his one thing, and he just taught me about family and community and being present. And then, look, he was an my grandfather was a U.S. postal worker from Philly. My mom went to Temple University, got a 2-year degree, first-generation college student. Dad was a first-generation college student at Penn, and he was an orthodontist, right? So he had nothing to do. So I went to Penn, I followed in the footsteps of my father, and I ended up finding my calling, really, which is investing and Wall Street and I took an Econ 1A class, and literally that didn't look back.
And that was the beginning. Was it Penn and then Drexel? Some people here don't remember Drexel. You and I know it very well. Was that when you began to view private equity as a route to go forward? Because Drexel was really the leading financer.
Yeah, so when I started, right, I went to Penn, and I always tried to focus on, and I transferred to Wharton. I never heard of Wharton. I got in like the backdoor way, which is you transfer. And I didn't even know about Wharton existed at the time. I had done well in school, and then you quickly realize that Wall Street is, the highest life form at Wharton in terms of getting a lot of responsibility at an early age, getting a lot of being where all the smartest people are going. And so I gravitated towards Wall Street, actually against the advice of my parents that I should be an accountant because it was safer that way. And so I went, and then I was choosing, between, like some of the famous firms, Citi, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Solomon, which is now part of Citi, obviously. A lot of firms, I go back to Kidder Peabody and L.F. Rothschild and all these firms, right? And so I was choosing, and the best and the brightest talent were going to Drexel at that point because of the high yield market and the innovation that was going on at Drexel. And so I went to Drexel, and then obviously private equity was just starting up, right? Then there was like KKR and Forstmann Little, and really in 1985 a small firm called Blackstone was formed, and I applied to one business school, which was Harvard, and I said if I get in, I'll go, and I lifted my head up and went to Harvard, and it's a really interesting story. I joined this small 5-year-old firm with 30 people called Blackstone. And so at that point, it was a very evolving industry. And again, it was all about the smartest people going. It was the most intense. And I always shot high with my own aspiration. And I just went where that took me. And that's when Apollo came calling 60 days after Blackstone.
And I remember it well. But in fact, look, you worked for Mike Milken, a good friend of both of ours, the legendary Mike. But in fact, you talk about your parents wanting you to be an accountant. I mean, you went through the bankruptcy of Drexel. I mean, this amazing firm went bankrupt. And then after this, how should we say, short stint with Steve at Blackstone, you then turned around and co-founded Apollo with Leon and Mark.
Right.
Just walk us through what impact the collapsing of a giant came, and then how you were able to turn around and start to begin the vision for the birth of Apollo.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, Apollo, Drexel went out of business, 10,000 people lost their jobs, and it's a great lesson in, kind of the ups and downs of Wall Street, right? And I actually happened to be at Harvard Business School at that time. And I was literally interviewing. I mean, a lot of this stuff is even crazy to talk about. I was interviewing with Steve Schwarzman about getting a job at Blackstone, and Pete Peterson walked in and said, banks are pulling, Drexel's done. I saw it at E.F. Hutton.
Right.
So I was literally in their office. It was February of '90, but then there was the entire high yield market collapsed because the government decided that savings and loan companies should no longer buy high yield securities, and so a bid fell out of the market, and all these great bonds, the debt of great companies it sounds kind of hard to believe now, but RJR Nabisco, McCaw Cellular, Turner Broadcasting had traded down to like 50, 60 cents on the dollar. And that created an opportunity for Apollo to innovate and to change the way private equity was done, even though it was a nascent industry.
But you took a risk. I mean, Josh, you didn't come from money.
Right.
I mean, you had gone through this. You'd seen something implode. What made you think that the vision of an Apollo could actually work? Because people forget there were, as I remember well, there were 3 of you sitting in Bennett LeBeau's conference room.
Right, 245 Park.
Exactly.
Look, I think a lot of times I talk to people about these career choices, and I think when you're making a career choice, I decided to start a business at age 25, right? So maybe I took a bit of a risk, but I felt that One, I had worked with, I had my Harvard education, my Wharton education, and my MBA and my Drexel 2 years to fall back on. So I thought I had some downside protection. Apollo had already, I was confident that I joined as we were raising our first $400 million, so I knew the lights were going to be on.
Right.
And I was working with people that I knew and respected, and I thought we were innovating. And so I weighed all that. I kind of think, every career choice you make, you have to kind of weigh the risk and return. And I did that, and I decided to make the jump. And obviously, I haven't looked back since. And by the way, if I had stayed at Blackstone, I don't think it would have ended up. There was only 30 people there at the time. So I think, look, when you're the real lesson is, so I think, treat yourself like an investment. Go through the risks, the returns, the upside, the downside, and decide, when you make your bet. And today, in today's culture, everyone wants to do startups, right? But for every Mark Zuckerberg or success story, there's probably 100 failures you haven't heard about.
Yep.
So I always caution people, wait for the pitch. Wait for the fat pitch. And if the fat pitch comes at 25, make sure you have your overhead covered, and then you can survive it, right? And I was young. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids. I was 25 years old. And so it was almost like the perfect time for me to take a risk.
But then you did it again. I mean, who would have dreamt at that time that Apollo would have a $75 billion market cap, $900 billion under management? And then after 32 years at Apollo, building something that was absolutely phenomenal, you turned around and started again.
Yes.
To build 26 North. Are you creating something sort of fundamentally different? Because Apollo has now become this incredibly broad asset manager.
Yeah.
What's the vision for 26 North in your mind?
Yeah, so first I did a startup when I was 55, and I did one at 25, or 57 and 25. And look, I think doing one at 57 when you're well capitalized and you have a lot of knowledge and relationships and expertise is, you have a lot of advantages. On the other hand, I'm exhausted. You work super hard, right? And so I would say that for me personally, I had two or three things in mind. One, I had taken a year off from Apollo, and after asking, it was COVID, and after asking my kids to go to lunch multiple times, finally they were like, "Dad, get a job." I'm just a better, I just personally am a little crazy in the sense that I love doing this. I love working. I love creating things. I love creating institutions that are excellent, that are mission driven. And I'm a better father, husband, friend, and person when I'm really busy and redlining. This is a bit too much. And then secondly, I saw an opportunity. I saw an opportunity that the big firms had gotten so big, and they had created these incredible ecosystems with incredible talent and people and technology and integrated business models. And then the below the top 10 firms, let's now get 80% of the capital. Below the top 10 firms, the middle market really hadn't kept pace. Anyone who's middle market is now big. And so I felt that there was this opportunity to create a next generation alts firm that would, in a small way, be disruptive in terms of our ability to get the best talent, and to create alignment. I'm the largest investor, and many of the people that join us, they're taking big pay cuts, but they have this upside that I used to have at Apollo, but now it's harder to get at these.
Have you had any major milestones in the 3 years that you look back and say, these are the things that we've accomplished on this journey? Anything in your mind that you would?
Yeah, I would say, obviously hiring, Mark Weinberg out of Brookfield, hiring Brendan McGovern, getting Evan Zetsky. A lot of it is like making key strategic hires. And then obviously, we're at $32 billion now. I would say, I would say the big reinsurance transaction we did with American Equity Life that put us in business, and then we've now raised the largest private equity fund ever, and the first-time fund, which is now approaching $5 billion, and and then our direct lending platform is now $8 billion. We have a $5 billion BDC. But as far as like key milestones. Those first investors,
right,
which I can't really mention, that really supported me. The first key hires that left these like massive jobs and took a risk with me. I have a lot of gratitude to them. And then the first big investors who literally said to me, listen, it's you and a business plan and some people that look good on paper, like this is on you, man. Like you were counting on you to deliver. And so those first people that supported me, you know, I feel a lot of gratitude, and those were big milestones. And by the way, you know, it's a little nerve-wracking. I mean, you're talking to people in your kitchen. Not everyone, I mean, going from having a staff of, you know, thousands to a staff of 20, right?
It's a big
totally
responsibility.
different job.
It's a big responsibility because you don't have the infrastructure, but the vision is keeping you excited. But at the same time, when you were at Apollo, you and my good friend David Blitzer launched into the sports arena. So you were doing that at the same time. What do you and David look at when you think about this? First of all, your timing obviously was superb, but we'll come back to that. How do you put that same winning culture that you have so clearly enunciated into the teams, the leagues, in the different country? How do you translate that drive into a winning culture for these teams?
Yeah, so I think in both cases, you're steward, right? So in the case of private equity alternatives, you're steward of investor capital, which means their capital is more important than yours, and you're selling, you know, value creation. You're selling stock price and dollars and cents, and the investors really have to trust you. In the case of sports teams, right, you're selling memories. Like you're selling wins, you're selling memories, you're selling experiences that I look at it as the teams really belong to the cities. So first of all, you have to start with, you know, the culture you're creating, and then you have to get incredible talent, right? Like both things are driven by incredible talent. Like those first, you know, your coach, your GM, your president, your star quarterback.
Yeah, no, and I remember,
versus your head of private equity, your head of.
But it's different. It's very different from the standpoint of what you went through. But now you've got a big public persona because when you're the managing partner of these teams here right now, how do you sort of make sound business decisions while at the same time honoring everything that you said, which is the passionate commitment to the community, the fan base, and the recognition that in some ways you're a steward for other people? How do you make rational decisions?
So what you have to do is set up a business plan, right, that allows for you to make non-economic decisions in the short run with the hope. Like we have, you know, massive families, we have Arctos, and when we included them as partners, we said, look, we're gonna try to win. That means we might go into the luxury tax. That means we're gonna try to invest. We might upgrade facilities and equipment rooms and stadiums eventually. And you need to understand that, but we think that the experiential, you know, kind of sports is really an amazing place to be, that the media ecosystem is exploding, that people now wanna watch sports all over the world, and it's gonna, and the growth in the media and these big teams will offset that, but like we're gonna spend and do things that in the short run might depress our profitability, so we're gonna invest to win. And if you try to make short-term cash flow oriented decisions in sports, the cities figure it out quickly and they kill you, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be all in for the cities. And again, it's a different currency. One is memories, and one is value creation. But the good news is sports, everyone loves sports so much. It's so important to the media ecosystem. It's growing so quickly that in these major sports, you can do that and still make a lot of money. It's been an amazing experience financially for me. I mean, the Sixers, we bought for $280 million, right? The Devils, we bought for $330 million. Correct. Palace, we bought for, you know, 200 or 300 million pounds. And even the Commanders now. So what I'm saying is that it's worked out financially incredibly well. And we had that vision in our head. I wouldn't have done it if I thought I was going to lose money, but I still really go to the bat for the cities, and I just don't worry about it.
No, but just as you are the face for 26 North, they put it all on you. You're the face for a lot of these teams at the end of the day. And there's, as you know, when you look at some of them, they seem to, you know, blame and praise the owner depending on the day of the week. So it's a different profile from what you've enjoyed over a long time. But you talked about these, you know, few $100 million purchases, which we can now look at in hindsight on the 76ers and the Devils. You then turned around on the Commanders and paid a record-breaking price.
Did.
Just over
It was hard.
just over $6 billion. And as opposed to just writing the check yourself, you brought in a really, really great group of investors, many of whom I know, Mitch Rales, Magic Johnson. What sort of guided you when you were thinking about who I want to go on this journey with? Because this was a partnership you were creating.
Right.
How did you think about it, especially when everything about this, as you said, is as much about like community trust as finance? I mean, community trust is critical. How did you think about your
Yeah, so first of all, it's worth taking a little bit of detour. So the NFL, right, you're allowed to put $1 billion of debt on a franchise. So I paid the highest price ever in the history of the world for a sports team, which was $6 billion. At the time, I would joke that my credentials as a value investor were shattered. It looks smart now, and I really was a fundamental believer in the NFL, number one, and then the Washington franchise, because I had grown up with the Washington franchise. I thought it was bigger than everyone else was giving it credit for, and that's turned out to be true. But when you're I'm there's 20 incredibly important founders. You mentioned a few,
Yeah.
but there's a lot more.
I know.
So what you do is you're just you're super transparent. Like you try to pick people with that. So I couldn't afford a $5 billion check. I just couldn't do it. So I had to go out and raise capital. And the reason I got the Commanders was that I could raise capital, and no one who didn't need to raise capital. And I had bid on the Broncos the year before and was outbid by the Walton family. They just waited for me to price it. They didn't have to raise capital. And Jeff Bezos was eyeing the Commanders, and I knew that going into it that I might lose, right? Because at the end of the day, I needed to raise capital, he didn't. But we ended up getting it, and the partnership was created by people who were like-minded, who were willing to be stewards, who understood. Many of them loved Washington football, right? Many of them loved Washington. They felt it was almost like public service, to do it. Like for example, Mitch Rales, he loves Washington football. He wanted to do this for the city. But at the same time, they all wanted to make money, right? And so if I had to make the case that we could do both, and I did make the case, and so no one gives me a hard time. If anything, they're like, kind of, let's go win, let's go do that. They're incredibly supportive right now, and obviously the investment's gone as well as anyone could have ever expected. But you need people that are like-minded value-wise and that understand.
And the next deal may be at 10 or more. It already has been with the 49ers. Let's just spend 1 minute, because I know how important Washington is to you from your upbringing, and not many people know that about you. Talk about your vision for the stadium, which I'm really excited about, because it's going to be transformative for our nation's capital. What do you see going with the stadium?
Yeah, so the context for sports now is that they're so important to the ecosystem so we're building an arena in Philly with Comcast. We're building a stadium in Washington. Then we're building a football stand in London with Crystal Palace. And especially in Washington, but everywhere, the stadiums, the arenas become anchor tenants for developments. And so they go beyond sports. People want to, they want to hang out there. They want to go to restaurants there. They want to live there. They want to work there. And, if you look at how Dallas has set itself up, right, as maybe the most sterling example, but there are a lot of them, they're anchor tenants for communities. If you look in Washington, right, they have where the Washington basketball and hockey teams play.
Right.
And that's changed the whole area. Or the Nationals, right? The Nationals changed the Navy Yard. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make the largest private investment in Washington, $4 billion. And we're going to build a stadium and then a whole community around it. It's going to create billions of tax revenue, thousands of jobs, affordable housing, retail, hotels, office space. And so, it's going to redevelop the whole area behind the Capitol, literally, in front of the Anacostia River. So it's going to tie Anacostia, which is a tougher area, into the rest of D.C., and it'll tie the mall and the Navy Yard together It's the last big property in Washington, so I'm going to be doing it the rest of my life, and it's an incredibly exciting project. We're going to manage the development on behalf of the city, and we're going to create a whole new area for.
No, it's going to transform Washington.
And it'll literally be the national stadium. I mean, if you think about it, it'll be right behind the Capitol and the best acts. And what you learn about stadiums and arenas, which now I'm a student of, is that the technology has evolved tremendously. So every new arena will be closer, you'll have better sound, you'll have better premium. So the arena itself will be better in many, many ways, just based on our investment in the technology. And then it'll be all the best acts will want to come.
Well, it's similar to what's happened with Steve and the Clippers. It becomes a completely different thing to the days of having an isolated stadium.
Yeah.
Let me change course a little bit here right now. I mean, Josh, you've been a leader since you were 25, but you've done it in a bunch of different places. I mean, private equity, the locker room, philanthropically, et cetera. How do you adapt your leadership style when you think about drilling an investment committee versus sitting with your teams? How do you adapt yourself?
Yeah, so I've evolved, right? So when I first started work, I was like a doer, and I was just like, I would do everything, and then I became a manager, and I've been told that maybe I was a little hard, but I'm very mission-driven to deliver on behalf of clients, right? On behalf of the people that we're managing capital for, and then what happens is you evolve from being a manager and motivating people to being a leader. When you're being a leader, right, you're setting a vision and a mission, right? And our mission is to create alpha for our investors, and then you're hiring great talent, and then you're trying to motivate them to, in essence, achieve the big vision that you've laid out. And from our point of view, obviously, we're in a hard environment. Like, we compete against all these big firms, and I always say to people, and it's about who we hire, how we work as a team, and we have to basically win against these big players. And so we do use a lot of sports analogies. I'm going to stand up at my holiday party today and talk about how we've made the playoffs, but now we need to go to the Super Bowl, and I'm going to thank everyone. But I've become a servant leader. For me personally, I'm driven by how do I create an incredible ecosystem for my employees and my partners, and then how do I deliver for investors on our commitments. And what we talk about is wrapping dollars and cents into impact. And so we talk about helping retirees and school teachers and police officers save for their retirements. And honestly, it was interesting. I was over at the NFL before I came over here, and the real question is, how do you, if you can wrap it in something bigger than just people's personal career ambitions, you're going to win, and you give them something. People want to have impact. They want to change the world. They want to have drive positivity. They want to leave the world better than when they came. And so, like, kind of mixing these concepts. Yes, everyone's focused on their own, especially on Wall Street. Everyone's focused on their own personal career growth. But I always say, look, let me focus on that. You focus on your teammates and on the clients. I'll focus on you, and I promise you, if history's a guide, you'll do better here. And so it's about attracting people and then making sure they are carrying on this mission.
But does that mean your definition of personal success has changed? I'm sure it has.
Definitely.
But today, is it ensuring that you have winning teams, which include 26 North, your partners at 26 North, your investors, the community of Washington, Philly? How's your definition of success changed?
So obviously, when you first start, right, it's like the hierarchy of needs. I was, upper middle class kid from Chevy Chase, right, and you go to Penn, and you're like, okay, you get a job on, Wall Street, and you're just trying to like achieve success. And for me, it was less about financial success and more about personally, winning. I was just personally achieving, right? And
getting the face down in the mat.
Yeah, probably something like that. But it wasn't against others, it was against myself. So now it's about impact. How do I impact the world in the most positive way, right? And so for me, it's about, okay, that can be returns, it can be wins, it can be a stadium, it can be philanthropy, it can be, being an amazing father and, setting my kids, on the right path. So like, for me, I spend my time And then what do I enjoy? Like, you can't leave. I enjoy, working hard and building amazing mission-driven organizations. Like, not everyone does. When I started 26 North, people were like, what are you doing? Like, you don't need to do this. You're putting your own reputation at risk. What if it had failed, right? Like, you're stepping into the arena, like, you're putting yourself at risk. And for what? You have enough money. And for me, it wasn't about money. It was about creating something great again that would benefit the world in a positive way. And I did see this opportunity between the medium-sized firms and the big firms where we could do something very different.
But you've always put yourself out there because, frankly, owning the sports teams is putting yourself out there.
It is.
And let me dig a little bit further here. I'd love your view. NFL, NBA, NHL, and the Premier League. What are the differences in owning teams in each of these different 4 markets or leagues? How do you see, what are the characteristics that
Yeah, so, I mean, first of all, the big sports are, more and more people want to watch, they want experiences, right? So they want live sports content. If you think about the world that we live in today, there's a lot of, and you were talking about it, there's a lot of divisiveness, a lot of bad things are happening. Sports brings people together. It's unity, right? At that moment when, Jade Daniels throws the Hail Mary, if you're in the stadium, you're part of our community. If you're watching on TV, you're part of our community. You're experiencing that moment together. And I remember watching the Washington football win Joe Gibbs' first year, 1982 Super Bowl, then going up to Philly and watching, Moses Malone and Dr. J and Maurice Cheeks and Andrew Toney win in 1983. And everyone came out, and they were both divided cities, racially, economically, socially, and everyone came out in the streets and were cheering for their team. And so sports does that, and there's a breakdown in community, and everyone wants sports. And so, that's, really important. So all the big sports are rising. As to the differences, the NFL it's as extensive of the U.S. culture. It's dominant. 17 million people watch an average NFL game. 1.5 million people watch an average NBA game. It's much bigger, and then it goes down from there. It's much bigger than anything else out there. It is mostly a U.S. sport. So the NBA and the NHL, to a lesser extent, are growing internationally. The NFL is introducing flag football. It's become an Olympic sport because you don't have to be 6'4", 300 pounds. It's very hard to play NFL football. You need a lot of people. You need pads. It's generally not for anyone who's not big, right? It's very unusual. So I think that the NBA and the NHL are more global. The NFL, more U.S. based, but much bigger, and all are important to the media ecosystem. The Premier League and European soccer, right? That's the most popular sport in the world.
Correct.
We're in London. They have the financial makeup of European soccer, and the Premier League is harder than the U.S. sports. The U.S. sports, obviously, they're the leagues, right? You market your trademarks collectively. They're organized for parity. So when you lose, you get a high draft pick. The Premier League and European soccer have things called relegation, which is a financial disaster, right? So if you get relegated, so Palace probably gets $200 million of media money. It goes to $5 million. But our salaries don't adjust very much.
Right.
So we got to win, right? And so you're much more short term, and then you're competing against Man City, Man United, Chelsea, Real Madrid, much bigger clubs, and there's less. There's the U.S. leagues operate with player caps and salary caps. The Premier League and European soccer is heading that way, but everyone is allowed to spend. It's very unlikely that Palace will ever be as big as any of the bigger clubs, because increasingly they're moving towards a system where you can spend your revenues plus or minus.
And are the fans more aggressive in the Premier League?
The fans are very aggressive and tribal in the Premier League. I'd say that it depends on the city. Certainly hockey fans can be aggressive and tribal. Football fans can be aggressive. I'd say the fans in the Premier League probably are slightly more aggressive on average. And once you go to European soccer, you know, it's worse. I mean, there used to be like proper fisticuffs. You know, you'd go and like they just ring the visiting fans would go in and there'd be constant fights and violence. Right now they're sort of stopping that. It's moving together a bit. But yeah, there are all the sport people. I mean, you know, it's hard to own these teams and not be, you know, kind of held accountable, right, by fans. But I think it is true. They're probably slightly more aggressive on
Do you think
average.
the World Cup in the U.S. is going to have a big impact on the sport in the U.S.?
I do. I think it will, and I think people love playing football. They love playing football, as they say, or soccer. But I think that, look, the reality is that in the men's leagues, the Premier League and UEFA, they're already too far ahead. So people want to watch the best players in the world. And I think U.S. soccer men are going to have trouble catching up. So if you look at the MLS, the amount that we spend on, we may spend 2 to 250 million pounds on players. I think the average MLS team spends, you know, 10, 15, 20.
Yep.
And the media payment is growing so fast that it's never going to catch up. So the Premier League is one there, the U.S. NBA, the NFL, the NHL. It's very, very difficult for people to catch up there. And then women's soccer, right, has a chance of really setting the standard, right? So at the end of the day, sports is made up into local and global media businesses and then local sports, like kind of like a local event, right? Yep. A circus, or I mean, it's not a circus, but an event. And so, you know, I think that the U.S. MLS, right, other than a very small number of teams, is likely going to be a local event business versus a global media business.
Do you think, by the way, before we get on to area that's critical from my standpoint, philanthropy, do you think that the return on investment as you look forward will be highest in women's sports when you look at the value of how some of these teams, albeit from a small base, massive returns? What's your view?
So I think that women's sports, WNBA and women's soccer, are, you know, at the beginning of I think we're at an existential moment in women's sports. I think, you know, half the people on the planet are women, are girls, and they need, you know, their own sports. They need their own role models, and it just makes sense that women's sports is going to be a lot bigger. Both sports are very nascent, and there's probably more risk, right? You know, the WNBA is going through a negotiation right now with its players. That's a really important negotiation. You know, NWSL is, you have to pay a lot to enter these sports. They trade at a very high multiple of revenues based on the growth. So, but I do think they're very interesting plays. I think they're different and probably more risky, but with a lot more upside than the major sports.
Do you think they'll get media rights that are valuable?
Yeah.
Because that's
I think they're going to go up
key.
multiples. I mean, if you look at the WNBA, right, more than 1 million viewers per year already. You know, the Caitlin Clark effect, I don't think that's a one and done effect. I think that like a lot of people want to watch the WNBA. You know, the NWSL, the women's soccer is coming along. It's not where the WNBA is, but it's growing like crazy. And I think that, you know, the media payment's going to go up because people are going to want to watch it. And it's a question of keeping it competitive, keeping the culture good, making it a good product, right? And I think that's easier said than done. It's very complicated. You need to develop a relationship with the players so that they see everything as a win-win. And, you know, there's risk in all that. But I think that it is a really interesting investment.
So we will see you potentially buying some women's teams going forward.
We've already, you know, agreed to bring we're at 2030, we're be bringing a WNBA team to Philly. And yes, we're looking at, you know, women's sports for sure. So
let me go on to philanthropy. I've known your wife Marjorie and you for a long, long time when we go back on some of the things we've done together. You've continued, as you continue to build out the sports franchises, 26 North, I'd love you to address something that's important to everyone here and our audience online, and that is your approach to involving your children in your work. I think Hannah and Drew are here in the audience somewhere. I can't really see that well.
I can't
see anything right now. but I've been
Hi,
around
Hannah.
you and your kids many times here right now. What are your thoughts on preparing the next generation for what could be quite an amazing legacy from your standpoint and Marjorie's?
Yeah, so I would say that you start by just, kind of how you live your life, right? And from our point of view, kids are very observant about what you do. It's not about what you say, it's what you do. And from our point of view, obviously, I mean, it's hard for me to, I'm a religious person, it's hard for me to make up all, if you had told me that I would own, the Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia 76ers, the New Jersey Devils. I mean, I watched, those were the first two of my favorite teams, and then own a football club in London, and then start Apollo. I mean, it's hard for me to make up my life, right? So I have tremendous gratitude for, people that paid it forward for me. So our view is, you got to pay it forward for everyone else. The sports platforms, right, create incredible leverage with philanthropy. So if I, give away money, right, because they create a massive microphone and publicity. So we have, probably across the platforms, 5 or 6 million followers. And the players have, 10, 15 million followers. And so whatever we do in the community is amplified like crazy. And so, we tend to do a lot of things because we get real leverage on it. And I think, as to our kids, and so, we're focused on, sports for life. We firmly believe in sports and how it changed my life trajectory. And, our kids were fortunate enough to play sports, and, why can't everyone's kids have that same opportunity? But it's got to come with life skills, right? And then, wellness, and then education, right? And that's where we spend our time. But we do it in the areas where we have the most leverage, which is where the teams are or where
Exactly.
we visit. So that's how we do it. And the kids, right, all have their own passions. And my discussion with our kids is, go, be excellent, be mission driven, change the world in whatever way you want to change the world. And every father's hope is that they join the family business one day. I'm one of 5 so far. Hannah is she is the chief of staff to the president of the Commanders, and it's great. But everyone's finding their own way, and it's the same with charity, which is they're finding their own way with that, and we're making available opportunities for them.
So it's hard, having known you all this time, to ask this question, because we're now asking legacy questions.
Yeah.
What do you think will be the most enduring part of your legacy when you think back of this, incredible career here from your vantage point, with many more years to come, God willing? What do you think will be the enduring part of your legacy?
I think the most enduring part of my legacy will be like my family and what they end up doing with all this. I'd say secondly, I think that both sports and business just touch. We already at 26 North have millions of beneficiaries.
Sure.
We have our Christmas party. We have our holiday party of 170 people, but we're hiring a crazy amount of people next year. And I look back on the ecosystem we created at Apollo, and we touched thousands of families, and we've changed people's lives, and there's a lot of gratitude there. But and at the same time, but clearly, millions of people cheer for these teams, right? And how Washington does, on a given day, how the Sixers do, that changes how people feel in the city, right? And so, and then, these stadiums and the hotels and the thousands of jobs and the, billions of tax revenue and the communities that we're creating, those are like massive legacy projects. And so, my own view is that I'm just humbled to be able to play a part in all this, and I feel like for whatever reason I've been chosen. I mean, as I said, it's hard for me to explain, why I'm here and what's going on, but I'm just spending as much of my time as I can physically spend on my family and on these, kind of business.
Well, that's certainly something everyone here should take into part, no matter what you're doing. It is that's the enduring legacy from that standpoint. You've known Citi for a long time from the outside, as a client, as a partner. What advice would you give us as a piece of advice to take away?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that obviously you all compete in a competitive world as we do, and I think it's all about culture and people. I think it's all about, I mean, these types of sessions, like learning, it's about making it, like obviously everyone here has, everyone in this room is very fortunate, right? We all are. You might maybe want someone on the outside saying, well, you're more fortunate than I am. But I think that's not, we're in the top 1% of 1%, right? So I think that, sort of making it about, I think if Citi can create a culture that's about excellence, that's mission driven, and that's about building something that's greater than the individual parts and changing lives, I think that'll be an enduring attraction of talent, and talent really wins.
No, those are good words, and I think we should all sit back, especially in the holiday season, and actually feel very blessed that we're here and feel very thankful. Certainly in my case, Plan B would have been not so good, I can imagine.
No, certainly not this.
Not this. So listen, we're going to take some questions from the audience if we have. I can't really see, so. There we go, we got people. So any folks have questions from the audience? Otherwise, we have a few on Slido. Anything from
Ask away.
Okay, right over there. I can see someone right there. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here today. This has been really interesting. It's a very full circle for me. My first job out of college was actually doing PR for the Philadelphia 76ers. I've been in the media room with you, Mr. Harris, several times of the Wells Fargo Centers, so it's good to see you again. My question is, what is a skill that has been most surprisingly transferable for you between private equity and establishing and leading HBSC?
Yeah, so again, I mean, I think it's literally about leadership. I mean, it's about, the core values and the core principles, like at the Commanders, or the Sixers for that matter. I mean, obviously we took franchises that had sort of lost their way, that weren't delivering for fans or the community, that weren't winning, and we, put in place like, big vision, and then, brought in amazing people and changed the culture and the environment and ultimately the product on the field and on the court. So I think the leadership part of it is highly transferable. The stuff that's harder, right, is media. Obviously, and you alluded to it, no one, when Lyondell was maybe amongst the most successful deals ever on Wall Street, and honestly, no one really cared that much. But everyone cares about, Joel Embiid, and is he playing, and are we winning, and Jaden Daniels, and they don't. So the amount of, and I obviously have. And it's just a different skill, right? Like you have to be a better communicator. You have to, really connect with people personally, right? And so probably I'm very different as a speaker. If I was up here before owning all the teams, I'd probably be talking about EBITDA and, debt to EBITDA and, value creation and alpha creation. And it would be a pretty, and I don't think that it would be connecting with people as much. And so sports, you're really dealing with millions of people and at a very basic level, right? And you need to talk, you need to really be a person and a human being and put yourself out there. And so those are the similarities and differences, but it all reconciles ultimately. I think the other thing is obviously sports really teaches you, when you grow up on Wall Street, which I kind of did in my career, it's about money and, look, a lot of what binds these firms together, let's face it, is capitalism. I'm a believer in Adam Smith and greed and all that, but it's not sports is about something bigger. It's about happiness and memories and coming together as a community. And I think, instilling that into corporate culture really matters. A couple others.
There's a couple of others. Whoever goes first. Right there. Yep, thank you.
Hi. You mentioned when you make a decision, you always look at the risk and return, and finally you decide to go ahead. So, in retrospect, are there any missed opportunities you regret that you didn't partake on?
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, there are always those. Generally, Listen, everyone's born with a certain talent. I was born being a good investor. I don't exactly know why, because, my family did not come as being an investor. But by and large, everyone has their own investment style. My investment style is downside protection and upside optionality. And so I've certainly, just my style of investing is cash flow based. It's not growth based. And so I've been late in AI. I've been, I probably didn't do as much as I wanted to do in crypto. But you have to know yourself, right? And what I'm good at is what I'm good at, which is, cash flow based investing, and then sports, right? Sports is growth equity, right? And I know enough about sports where I have a competitive advantage in that, I believe, and I have enough access. And so, I've been able to transfer those skills to sports. But for sure, if you have my style of investing, you're not gonna strike out a lot, but you're not gonna hit a lot of home runs. There are other people, right, like the venture business. You miss 7 out of 10 times, but you hit on 1 or 2, and that's just not in my temperament. I remember I bought Bitcoin early at $30,000 or $40,000, and it was up, it was down, it was up, it was down. I was like, all right, I can't deal with this. I sold it. So I literally lost money on Bitcoin. I bought it 40 and I sold it 30, and it just wasn't my temperament, right? So you have to know who you are.
But that's also your heritage. I mean, if you think back from Drexel and Apollo, that's what you learned.
That's what I learned.
Cash flow, and in fact, growth equity. When you invested, it all looks like a genius in hindsight, but investing in those teams was truly growth equity from that standpoint.
It was.
That was very different. There was another question back there, sorry.
Hi, my name's Caroline. This is also a full circle moment. I spent a few years in group sales at the Sixers when you had just bought the team. Oh, hi.
A lot of
we'll chat
Sixers
later.
people.
And I work here on the
recruiting
sports
from us.
sponsorships team, so my question's kind of selfish, but hopefully everyone enjoys it. What trend or two do you see affecting the sports industry and really the fan experience in the next, say, year or two?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm deeply immersed in stadiums and arenas, and it's just the new arenas, the new stadiums are gonna be way, way back. I mean, literally, technology is revolutionizing it. It's everything from, you'll sit a lot closer, the premium will be a lot better, the sound will be better, and so the stadium experience, and then there'll be a lot of stuff around the stadium. So the sort of, the act of going to an arena, going to a stadium will be much better. I mean, if you go to our old stadium and our old arena, the suites are much higher, you can't see as well. The premium is not as good, it's further,
Right.
and there's not as much of it. And so that's kind of one big mega trend in sports. The other mega trend in sports is that it's the globalization of media content. And so more and more, now in China, more and more people watch the NBA more than in the US, right? There'll be more audience. So you're seeing this globalization of these sports, the big sports, and it's this incredible, and everyone's watching it on their phone, and AI is about to revolutionize the experience. So if you look at the new NBA deal, and where Amazon now has come in along with, Disney and ESPN and, others, the AI will now deliver. If you like betting, you'll get to bet. If you like stats, you'll get stats. If you like gaming, you'll get gaming-oriented. If you like replays, if you like certain players, so it's going to stream in exactly how customized streaming. So that's going to change how people view sports content. And I do think sports more and more is going to lead the way in terms of, kind of entertainment content, because there's so many people who care about it. And now you have the biggest tech companies jumping in. You've got Netflix, you've got Amazon, and they are signing these multi-year deals where they're putting up, Amazon just invested $25 billion in the NBA, right? They want that to work over 11 years. And so you're now seeing a lot of the tech companies reorient towards sports.
Okay. Let me go to one other thing here, and that is, you sort of addressed it here, and it's really for people in the audience that do a variety of functions in risk. You talked about cash flow, decision making, how you do it in terms of navigating. Let me ask you just one thing. In terms of when you think about you and I have seen a number of different cycles here right now.
Right.
And to me, the one characteristic I've always felt about some of these cycles is sometimes it feels like this is the big one.
Yeah.
We're not going to get out of this one. How have you viewed sort of risk management? Is it downside protection, or is it a vision that you know you're going to get out of it from your side?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think that ultimately, right, you can't divorce the micro from the macro, right? And we're in a macro environment now where, the current administration has been very clear. They want interest rates to go down, right? So I think you're going to see, some more liquidity flood into the market. You're seeing, fixed income spreads at all-time tights. And I think that, I think the government learned from Lehman Brothers, right? The financial crisis, we were all literally teetering on financial destruction, and so that will never happen again. So I think it's unlikely to happen. So I think like for the next few years, you're going to see more liquidity. I think long run, it's about the debt crisis and how much debt, and the dollar, and the fiscal, the U.S. government borrowing, right? And so I think that's a ways off. So I think my view is that we're in a kind of a benign environment for the next few years, and so you factor that in, and then I think a lot of what we do is security by security. Like we are, we just grind. Like we get behind the numbers, we run all kinds of scenarios, and we just do an incredible amount of work on each investment. And we like to pride ourselves on doing more work, right, than others, and thinking about every possible outcome and minimizing the chance of, losing money, right? And we may not get the most upside, but we're gonna hit a lot of doubles and triples and not strike out very much at all. And that's how we run our business. But a lot of it is just grinding, getting into the details of an industry, of a company, and then looking at areas in the market, right? What 26 North does is, where is there a mismatch of capital need? So if it's insurance, right, that for a period of time, right, there was not enough capital insurance and spreads widened out.
Yep.
And Paul was able to take advantage of that. We took advantage of it. It's tightening up now. Direct lending, right? For a while, there was a blowout in spreads, and now you're seeing it come back in. And so you have to stay at, to use a hockey analogy, you have to be forward-looking in terms of what businesses you're in, move ahead of everyone else, and get stuff done quickly where you raise and invest capital.
And therefore not chase the latest.
When you chase the latest thing, you just better be sure you're right. I mean, you can chase, like, look, I think that we think that digital infrastructure, the amount of capital going into data centers, right? We may all diverge on what's going to happen with AI, but there are literally trillions of dollars going in, and you need to build data centers, right? So there's just a need for capital, right? That's bigger than even the big tech companies can deliver. So that's an opportunity where spreads will widen out. I don't think they'll be juicy. I just think they'll be good risk return. So you can be a follower as long as, I think it ultimately comes down to, is there enough supply of capital to meet the demand? And so you can be a follower. It's better to be a leader in many cases, but you can be a follower as long as that's a longer term situation.
And as long as you know where you're heading in terms of length of investment.
Exactly.
And look, I want to thank Josh so much. It's our last session of the year here right now, and his journey is pretty unique and special, and I think people should recognize that here right now. Coming out of Chevy Chase and going all the way through to owning the Commanders, building Apollo, which was incredibly special, now 26 North. I think we're privileged to have him here. I want to wish the teams a great season from your standpoint here right now, and I look forward to seeing great things with every one of the teams. I think for those of you that are in the audience, I think Josh, recognizing the weather, left everyone a Commanders knit hat. Hopefully there'll be one for me here right now. But I want to give a big hand of applause to Josh.
My parting words are dream big, get at it, and showing up is half the battle.
And then stay tuned for next year as we have some of Josh's compatriots that are going to be presenting here that dreamt big and thought big. Steve Schwarzman will be following you here, and then Michael Dell. So we look forward to seeing everyone in the new year. Thank you.
This is how legends decisions are made.